Hi, I'm Sean Stone. Today we'll be following up with the John Lear story coming up on Buzzsaw.
Central Intelligence Agency.
It was described by witnesses as
Jeremy Corbell is the young documentary filmmaker who's directing The Immaculate Deception, the upcoming film about John Lear's life story, his theories, and why we should take them seriously. Jeremy's joining me in studio to talk a bit more about John's story as he related to us in last week's Buzzsaw. He told us some really eye-opening things, including gray aliens on the moon and an alien presence on Saturn. And I think he even said that we humans have never been outside of our, beyond our stratosphere or beyond, let's say as far as the moon. We've never gone that far, right? So let's just start with, why should we take John seriously? Because obviously you do.
Yeah, well, I mean, John is an extraordinary person. He's had extraordinary experiences in his life. Basically, John has come to all of his own conclusions through the experiences that he's had. And he has certain belief systems. My belief systems don't fall perfectly aligned with all of his belief systems, but I think it's important that each of us experience and look into the truth on our own, and then make our determination. And that's what John has done. You know, he's not lying to people, he's not telling people crazy stories just to get a rise out of them. You know, John believes the things that he says. And the deeper question is, how did John arrive to these extraordinary beliefs?
Right.
And what are those experiences that led him to his worldview? And, you know, separate from my worldview or yours, here's a man, he's a serious man, ex-CIA pilot plus everything else, and he is coming forward with what he believes to be true and real.
But he has been disinherited by his family, right? His father was the founder of the Learjet.
Yeah, I don't think they got along too well, let's say that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think it has anything to do with the fact that John's willing to talk about these topics?
Absolutely not. I think that just like in any family, there's, you know, ups and there's downs, and I think that they had probably, you know, tension before that. Actually, it turns out that Bill Lear, his father, was most likely working in, you know, above top secret capacity himself. So he was not a disbeliever from what I understand. I think John's personality is strong, and he's made some choices, and his father wanted other ones for him. But bottom line is, John chose the path that was right for him, and he's happy with it.
So how did you get to John Lear? I mean, what was your entry point, let's say?
Yeah, that was a doozy. Well, you know, so I heard I heard George Knapp on the radio when I was 13 years old. And that forever weaponized my imagination, hearing about the propulsion systems as described by Bob Lazar, hearing the way George Knapp, you know, took the information, was a disbeliever to begin and became a believer, and hearing how John, you know, was out in the 70s by Area 51 before anybody knew about it, taking photos of the stealth fighter and releasing them through the newspaper. Why would a guy who used to work for the CIA doing flights, you know, stir shit up like this? Why would he do that? So I was fascinated with John as an individual, as a human, and it took about 3 years at that time of calling him, getting everybody I can to try to reach out to John. I was a kid with a camera. I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And finally, after knocking on his door, calling him, you know, after about 3 years, he let me in.
3 years?
3 years of trying constant contact to get him to open up his door to me.
So he wasn't looking for publicity. It's not like this guy's going out there saying, you know, oh, I got a story for you.
At this time in his life, and I believe it was just because of personal issues, at this time, he was not looking to have me in his house. You know, he was not looking for what I was trying to bring. One day that all changed. He just called me up. Hey, this is John, Jeremy. I hear you're trying to call me, you know.
Yeah.
I go to his house, but it was not easy from that point. It took about the most uncomfortable 3 days of my life, you know, staring into the barrel of his cigar, and he would not give me anything. I had to generate the entire conversation. He would not answer anything unless I asked, and a lot of times it would just be, yeah, no, you know.
Right.
So, but
almost
then,
like he's he's the old pro. He's the one that's assessing you and analyzing you.
He was definitely assessing me, you know. But we now have come to a place when the floodgates broke, they opened, and John and I are dear friends. I think of him as family now. I care about him, and I have been astounded at what he has told me that initially I would just throw off, it'd roll over my back, and I wouldn't really contemplate it deeply. And then as my research got deeper, as that world opened up, what I found out, the things that he said that I thought were absurd, that happened to end up being true.
Like what, for example?
Right. Well, simple things like the integrity of Bob Lazar, like just facts. A lot of people think with John Lear that it's a big scheme, and him and Bob and they've been telling a lie for 25 years. And I got to tell you, no offense to any of these guys, but they could not continue a lie like this. Just knowing them personally, there's no possible way that these guys they don't always get along. Yet the story has stayed the same. There are other things that John has told me that, you know, I wouldn't feel comfortable, let's just say, putting out there, but I use them as kind of beacons. If this is true, then what? Mm-hmm. And, you know, there was an interesting article today, I don't know the validity of it, but about, you know, underground waterways and stuff like this off the coast of California. And, you know, John has had some really interesting theories, and some of them have been proof positive to me, and I find that highly fascinating. Here's a guy who says extraordinary things, and one by one, they're becoming obvious that they're true. Not that all of what he has to say is true. I don't know, but a lot of what he said.
The idea of underground waterways being basically underground rivers or conductors that would basically connect the ocean to interior lakes.
There's a lot of ideas out there, man, and some of them are really compelling and fascinating. But the main thing that John talks about now is he talks about our relation to non-humans, and that's the key and the crux of what he's brought forward. He was saying before the 80s, I mean, he was saying, or early 80s, he was saying, he was going on the record with George Knapp, talking about a massive cover-up of non-humans engaging humanity. And even that alone, you know, makes you think, oh, come on, this is crazy. But the world is changing, and people's eyes are opening, such as with the citizen hearing. With my partners, you know, we presented the citizen hearing.
Citizens hearing.
Yeah, and Ruben Langdon, you know, the producer. Ruben has gone out on a limb for this. I mean, he has really put all his effort into this. So with that crew of people, we were able to present over 5 days, 40 witnesses, 30 hours of testimony of serious individuals. Everybody from astronauts, pilots, second in command of the FAA, the Canadian ex-defense minister. Everybody came forward at the National Press Club in that time, and they testified not only to the reality of non-humans engaging humanity, but also they testified under oath to 5 congressmen, 1 senator, ex-congressman, 1 senator, to their involvement in the cover-up of this. And this is the paradigm shift, what John is saying.
Well, it's one thing. I mean, there's one thing to say UFOs are real, which I think actually, if you polled probably most people on the planet, they would say yes. They've either seen something.
Now they would.
I think it was always informally understood, but the point is, there's a difference between, hey, we've seen something in the sky, and it could be military advanced craft, or it could be something from a
That's the
different
biggest
dimension.
lie that is going to come forward.
But I think the next then step is harder to get people to admit. Is, well, okay, you believe in demons, you believe in angels, right? You believe in God, but you can't fathom that there's alien beings on this planet.
Well,
or that it's like the planet is more like Men in Black, for example, like the film Men in Black, right? With aliens that look human. That's different. That's another leap altogether for most people.
Right. But the difference is the weight of evidence. The weight of evidence in radar reports with craft making maneuvers that are completely impossible with known aeronautics, with known propulsion systems. We have hard evidence, we have hard facts. People are seeing these things. It's a different thing to say, I believe in God. That's a leap of faith. That's, you know, faith. It's a very different thing. When you see a craft that defies all known propulsion, the biggest lie is that it's ours. Mm-hmm. And that's coming with the drones and all this stuff. Right. The biggest lie. But the weight of evidence is so heavy now that there's no, look, I no longer have the luxury of disbelief. Period. I don't. And if you watch the citizen hearing, and if you sat there and listened to the testimony, I don't even know if you need to see a craft. So that's the paradox here. You know, it's like I was working with some nuclear physicists who are engaging the problem of cold fusion. They're trying to look at it from another perspective. And one of the scientists said to me, it's like a ghost. Sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not. Mm-hmm. He said, it's also like a UFO. If you've seen one, there is no doubt that it exists. And he says, with cold fusion, I've seen it. Mm-hmm. I have no doubt. And that's what drives him.
Right. Which makes us really have to question the nature of reality as we think we know it.
The nature of reality is not as we know it.
Exactly, as far as our theory of relativity and our Newtonian, Einsteinian version of reality in the universe. Yeah. If we're in a holographic universe, if it's more quantum based on subjectivity and consciousness, right? Then that completely changes the game. That's why you can 1 minute see a craft, next thing you know, I've seen it happen myself, where you turn a corner and it like literally dematerializes before your
There
eyes.
are reasons that we would see or not see a craft, right? There are reasons based on the propulsion systems that are allegedly used with these crafts that are very simple to understand. It's not complex. Mm-hmm. But more importantly, the nature of reality as we know it, you know, very simply, the double slit experiment when you talk about quantum physics, it is proof positive that our consciousness helps influence the nature of physical reality. Does that just happen on the quantum level? Does that just happen on the micro scale? Give me a break.
Of course.
Yeah.
So the micro scale is what we're made of, right? We look to be physical, but as some quantum physicists have pointed out, if you took all the real, if you took the actual density of you, right, and what you really add up to, and all human beings on the planet together, we could all fit into an apple, because mostly we're empty space.
Sure. I mean, it's wild, man. The nature of reality, we're not going to get to the bottom of it right here, right now. But the important thing to know is that there is a veil. There is reality as we see it. But there is so much more underneath and behind that. And it's up to us to weaponize our own curiosity, to ask the questions, to investigate, you know, the things that have not been investigated, and to come up with our own conclusions. But the true nature of reality, as I understand it, is far from what we're seeing right here in this studio.
Sure, I totally agree. So when it comes to obviously John Lear's story, yeah, and his, you know, what he can provide as far as evidence, have you seen anything substantial as far as evidence, or is it just more of like what, you know, he's giving you his interpretation based on his research, conversations, study?
The first question I asked John Lear when I entered his home is, do you have anything in this house that you can show me that will prove positively to me the existence of extraterrestrial life, non-humans engaging humanity? Mm-hmm. And he thought it for a second, you know, and just looks at me and goes, no. And look, I've had anomalous materials given to me from many people around the world, and I have gone in and done isotopic analysis. I've done scanning electron microscopy. I've done every single thing I can with qualified, amazing physicists, nanophysicists. We are looking for the smoking gun, but ultimately, is that the way it's going to be found? I'm unconvinced. I think the true architects of the secrecy, you know, are the ETs themselves. You know, in the whole scope of things, if non-humans want to be known, that's easy, no problem. Reveal yourselves. The big question is why? Why is that not happening? And why has this cover-up persisted? Right. And why do we have craft that we are back engineering? You know, that is a fact. So the question becomes, what is going on? What is the big game? Now with John, no, John will tell you himself. He can't put something in your hand and say, this is proof positive. But I have been witness at his home to people coming over and just revealing, showing him what they have. It's amazing. Because he's John Lear, because he's been in this game so long, I have been witness directly to people giving him information and explaining to him things that they never want public. Mm-hmm. John has experienced people and information that you and I never will. And I've been a small witness of that. And that has opened doors for me. And I too have had experiences. So that's the deal, is listen to what he says. Take it with a pound of salt. It doesn't matter.
Right.
look into it yourself.
Right. And exactly, and assess your own experiences, because I think most people, if they're honest with themselves, will admit that they've had high strangeness at some point in their life. They've had a paranormal experience, a supernatural experience. You know.
There's an old saying, a person convinced against their will is a person of the same opinion still, right? And essentially, it is weak within the mind of an individual if they're just given information.
Right. They have to experience it.
They have to experience it. We have to experience it.
So amongst the people that came to John, was Sleeper one of these characters?
Well, that's later on in the basic history of John. With how this all went down is, you know, he was given a huge amount of information. Now, some people believe that John is a disinformation agent, that because of his work with the CIA, that he is being utilized as an individual to express, you know, complex ideas, and that it's disinfo. I am not of that belief. I have, you know, spent a lot of time with John. I don't see that. I don't physically see that. But John was given a huge amount of information, and he ended up being right about a lot of things. Now, as John gets this information, he goes public with George Knapp, Channel 8 reporter, investigative reporter, the head of the investigative reporter team. Now, at the time, George didn't even believe 90 to 99% of what John was saying.
Yeah, and George he's an award-winning journalist, and obviously he's got a lot to lose if he goes out on a limb, right?
Yeah, well, more than that, George has more integrity than that. I mean, George is my mentor. He has helped me, more importantly, on paths not to go on, right? And he's a wealth of information. He is a Peabody Award-winning journalist, multiple, you know. He's a man of great integrity. So he, when no one else wanted to touch the UFO issue, said, well, look, John was right about a lot of stuff before, which is the theme with John Lear. You know, he brought the stealth fighter, the images of the stealth fighter out. You know,
really?
Yeah, that's something people don't know. He was snooping around Area 51 on the gates and took a photo and released it through Ned Day, George's mentor, back in the day. So he had some credibility, not just because of who he was, but what he had actually revealed that was true. That's a crazy story. FBI grabs Ned Day, pulls him in a room, said, where'd you get this? And Ned Day basically didn't give up his sources and said, look, if a little reporter in Las Vegas could get this info, what you got to really worry about is the Cold War. So he basically started there. George picked up what John put down, started looking through it, and then sure enough, within a short amount of time, John said, well, there is somebody who might go public. He's a little worried about himself. He was working not only at Area 51, but at S4. In comes Bob Lazar. Bob tells his story. The world says, oh, it's BS. And over time, the last 25 years, we are synthesizing element 115, element 117, element 118, whatever, all these elements. We're getting tiny little microscopic, you know, proof that these could possibly be stabilized by isotopes. And that's the core of Lazar's story, was that he was back engineering a propulsion system that used element 115 as the energy source. So again, you look at it through the scope of time, and you start to realize Bob has never changed his story. He is being validated in a number of ways through modern day science, and it's up to you to decide, you know, if you really listen to his story, is there truth in it?
Right.
And for me, after what I've experienced, and I've talked with Bob, and I believe Bob's story, 100%. I mean, he's done polygraphs and all this stuff, but it's different when you look in a man's eyes and understand him. And I believe his story.
Yeah.
Now, from there, after Bob Lazar entered John's life, I mean, that was a big coup. I mean, everything started happening. It was a wild couple of years. As George Knapp says, you had to have lived through it to understand it. So then John continues his path. I mean, again, Bob and John do not always agree. Like, Bob does not agree with 90% of what John says.
Well, Bob is based more on his own experience.
Yeah, he
and
does
John
not.
is drawing upon a whole cosmos in a sense. He's like he's reinterpreting the cosmos that we live in.
Right. Bob thinks John is ridiculous half the time, but there seems to be a bond there through what they have had to walk together, that path. So then you fast forward to the last like 8 years, and in comes this enigmatic, bizarre, strange, really kind individual that we're calling Sleeper. And it started with a correspondence. The correspondence was only through the internet, only in typed words. They never heard each other's voices for 8 years or something. Finally, it took me 2 years, and I was able to get Sleeper to come to Las Vegas and meet John Lear face to face for the first time, and that is in the film, What's the film name? What's my film name?
Immaculate.
Immaculate Deception.
Yeah.
So that will be in there, and there's a real powerful story in there.
Well, who's Sleeper? What's his story?
That's the question. Who is Sleeper?
Uh-huh.
What is his story? Importantly for me, it's how his story, his ideas, have influenced John's mind. John has come to a different place. John has come to a place where, and he'll repeat this over and over, every time I see him, he says this: live with integrity, without envy, hate, or greed. Tell those around you that you love them very much. And you are here to mature your soul, that we are containers, and that our animus is presented into the body so our souls can be matured, or our animus can be matured, whatever that means. That's his focus now. That's what he wants you to know. Bottom line. Now, where he got to that, how he got to that, if it was through his extraterrestrial experiences, if it was through George Knapp bringing him out on the news, if it was through his correspondence with Bob Lazar and the experiences that he had, or if it was through the integration of the information that Sleeper had and gave to John, that's where John lands.
Mm-hmm. So the idea is that this is a spiritual war that's going on. The religions are right insofar as they're saying that we have a soul. It's up to us to preserve the integrity of our soul, right? Because if not, the demons, Satan, will steal it, right? In this case, the Greys.
I'll say the answer to that question is a big no. Yeah, it's not. It has nothing to do with religion. It has nothing to do with a cosmic war. It's more cosmopolitics. I'm not saying that's not true. I just don't know that. Mm-hmm. That's not John's opinion. Mm-hmm. John's opinion is that the extraterrestrials or the non-humans are shepherding in some way, and he doesn't fully know, our souls, or our animus is the way to say it. So John believes that the extraterrestrial presence is somehow guiding humanity, that they have an agenda of their own, and humanity, as being human, we have an agenda of our own, but somehow those agendas, they're symbiotic at this moment. And so John's philosophy, his perspective, is not one of religion, and it's not one of a cosmic war. John's philosophy is that in this grand scheme, that the ETs on every level, whenever you ask, he says, an ET who it works for, they just go like this.
Higher up.
Someone's always higher up. But the Greys themselves, from the philosophy of John, are biological cybernetic organisms that work for someone else. They were just biological machines.
He believes they work for the reptilians, the Draco reptilians?
No, he's never said that.
He doesn't. Does he ever talk about that species?
Very, very seldomly would he bring that in, but more importantly, I think that he talks about, he does talk about a variety of different extraterrestrials and that sort of thing, but more importantly, he talks about that as humans, our job is to live with integrity, without envy, hate, or greed, and mature our souls, or mature our animus, and that we are being helped, and that the Greys are kind of like caretakers of that. Now, do I believe that? Actually, I think it's more complex than that. I've actually spent a lot of time with people who have had abductive experiences, who have had anomalous materials that seem to be placed within their bodies that we're having analyzed right now.
Right.
And one of my other films is on the late Dr. Roger Lear, different spelling, different person, no relation. And his quest was to find out from these abductees, which there are many of people who have had abductive experiences, and a lot of great people have studied it. And there is truth to that experience, absolutely. But the reasons behind it, they may be elusive.
It's definitely complex, because
it is very
you get
complex.
It from all spectrums. At the end of the day, it is a personal. We talked about the quantum nature of reality. It is a very personal, subjective reality. For some people, they seem to see the reptilians and they see them as they have experiences of reptilians as healers and kind of benevolent reptilians. You get the horror stories of reptilians like Satan, almost satanic beings, right? Demonic. The same with the Greys. Some that are there to basically traumatize, to rape, to hurt, and you get those experiences that say no, the Greys are actually just they're caretakers and they're friendly. So it makes you wonder what kind of it goes back. It's all across history, right? You have this
it's a mischievous
the vying gods, the vying spirits and fairies, and we're in a very living universe.
It is a mysterious, curious rabbit hole of a universe, and we're only seeing a little tiny reflection of what the truth and the reality is. You know, what's going on is, you know, I can say with absolute personal confidence, again, I want nobody to take my opinion as their own. They need to do this, they need to come to this understanding for themselves, but we are being engaged by non-humans.
Right.
We have been engaged by non-humans since the beginning of recorded human history.
But here's my question, and maybe you can't speak for Lear on this, but
Yeah.
if what do you think you would say if I said the people that are basically people are fighting each other essentially on this planet, right? People,
Right.
humans are engaging in war with each other, but at the highest levels, the real ones on top, are humans that are not human.
You might know more about that than I do. I mean, I don't know. What would John say?
That let's say that there are people that we think are human
Yeah.
that are not human.
Okay, well, all I can speak on is that there seems to be an indoctrination period whenever somebody is working within these black programs. That indoctrination period, like depending on what you're working on, let's say I'm working on propulsion, like Lazar was working on propulsion, okay? There's an indoctrination period where they're given certain amounts of information. What's curious about it is that information, those people who have been on the inside of that really, really controlled, the most controlled project within America, within the world, is the ET issue. Okay, I mean, you see that in the FBI documents, you see that in CIA documents, you see that in testimony of people who have come forward. But essentially, they're all told a narrative, and they're told a narrative outside of the scope of what they're working on. So you would figure someone who is a physicist would be told the physics of how these craft work, but they're not just told that. They're briefed, if you look at the Bob Lazar story, for example, they're briefed on a wide spectrum of the ET reality, and maybe that's to allow them to accept it within their own mind. Before they start working on these projects, there's an indoctrination period. And what people have learned in these documents, that's what I can speak on, because that's something that, you know, is these people got this information, this is what they're told. And it's things like humanity's genome has been altered 64 times, externally corrected by non-humans, other intelligences. I mean, that alone is wild. It changes the whole concept to you of what it means to be human. So when you're talking about non-humans maybe being in control, seemingly human,
Right.
What is a human? I mean, is it just Homo sapiens sapien that, you know, our biology makes us human?
But we already
You
know
know-
we have different blood groups. We have Rh negative and Rh positive, right? Like, what are these indicators?
As my mentor would say, George Knapp, big questions, disturbing answers.
So maybe humanity's a giant experiment in genetics,
You know, I mean,
crossbred between aliens. Did Lear ever talk to Alex Collier or speak about Alex Collier?
you know, it's been so many years with Lear in that bunker cave of his that almost every topic you could possibly imagine has been discussed, some more at length than others. So specifically, I can't recall that conversation, but I'll have to review all my footage.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Yeah.
We'll have to watch the documentary, obviously, to find out a lot more in depth.
Well, so the documentary film, Immaculate Deception, will really be a small slice of the scope of everything that I've done with John and what I'm planning to release.
Yeah.
That's essentially going to be a portrait of a pioneer, you know, somebody who, despite anybody else's opinion, his father's opinion, the world's opinion, people will call him a kook, people call him crazy, or some people, you know, say that he's the real deal, and he will entertain both ideas. The film, Immaculate Deception, you know, will show a pioneer, a curious individual who has been exposed to extraordinary information, and how that individual has processed that information, and what the end message is, what he's trying to tell you. But the rest of the footage, I mean, we're talking years of footage, that will all be coming out too. That will just be coming out in different short form content I will make available to the public to decide for themselves if John Lear is a legend, a liar, or a lunatic.
Yeah. And for you, he's obviously a legend.
Oh, John is a legend, period. Period. He's, you know, he is not crazy in the way that you would, you know, call someone normally crazy.
No, I think
all his faculties are there.
The only danger with most of these people is not so much that they're lunatics. The only danger gets into the level of disinformation, whether conscious or unconscious. Whether, you know, whenever someone has worked within a black program, right, CIA, at what level could they be disinfo agents even without their knowledge? And that's a valid question.
It is a valid question, and I have seen and am aware of specific disinformation campaigns that have been highly effective and for good reason, for national security reason. I understand that. Is John some sort of pawn in a cosmic conspiracy? Is Bob Lazar just a tool to initiate disinformation into the public? Possibly. Possibly. Do I think that? No. I think they're telling what they know, and I think they were both involved in different ways in this whole cosmopolitical experience. And I think
experiment.
Yeah, but I think
humanity.
I think ultimately that, look, my main point, if we're going to take away anything from what I know or what I have to say, it's very simple. Weaponize your curiosity. Don't be lazy. Form your own opinions. Listen to things, research things, come up with your own proof positive. And then when you know something, and it's matter of fact, do not relent.
Yeah.
Do not back down. You won't be resisted. You will only be assisted. And I've experienced that.
Or to boil it down, seek and ye shall find.
Yeah, the seeker is the finder, period.
Well, I'm glad you're doing the work you're doing. I really look forward to seeing where can people follow Immaculate Deception, like the updates.
ImmaculateDeception.com. They can look me up. I'm on the web.
Yeah.
You can find me. I'm not hard to find. You can call me. No problem.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
We'll definitely we'll connect. We'll put the links up. We'll put the trailer at the end here so people can get a sense of what's upcoming.
Okay, well, thanks for the time. You're doing a great show, and I'm happy to be a part of it, and hope to see you again soon and do it again.
Absolutely.
We'll get to talk about.
Exactly. We'll talk about Roger Lear next time.
Oh no. Okay, here we go.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate it. Absolutely.
All right.